Good day, everyone. My name is Matthew Birch, and I am offering $1,000 to the first person who can fundamentally disprove the in-space propulsion method I am about to describe, and who sends such a proof with accurate mathematical support to me via the email address in the comments below. If you cannot do that, there is still a second way that one person can receive a $1,000 reward, which will be described at the end of this video. Let me be clear, before you tune me out, there are no new propulsion technologies involved. I am not proposing any sort of changes to our understanding of the universe. There is also no technology comprehension involved that is more difficult than a reasonably adept algebra student with some basic physics comprehension can understand. The method described is simply a more efficient way to do high delta V in space propulsion and complies fully with the rocket equation. I will verbally describe the method and provide information below to allow the curious to find a free document I published a few years ago with more details, as well as a few other references that can be found online. I will not provide links, so you need not worry about me providing you with malware. Use your search engine of choice. To claim the $1,000 prize via the first method, you have to disprove the theory fundamentally. I will state the method clearly later in the video after some introduction. Calling me out on mispronunciation, terminology, or other errors made which do not fundamentally disprove the method will not count. Your response must use the same stipulations I used. By responding to my email address in an effort to win the challenge, you consent to give me permission to enter your response into the public domain so I can publicly respond to it or document that I have paid you. So watch your language and content, please. If you feel you can disprove the method, send a clear proof with supporting math to the email listed in the comments below. The determination of who was the first responder will be made by my email inbox timestamp, as I cannot account for all the possible ways by which an email might be delayed, nor will I try to do so. No other avenue of contact will be accepted for the first reward. If one person provides a disproof via any other method before another person provides a disproof to my Gmail address, the one who sent it to my Gmail address will still win. Don't send a placeholder email, then a full response later. If the email does not contain a valid disproof, it will not be considered a valid response and will be ineligible to win the challenge. Now, on to the description. The rocket equation tells us that as we wish to generate more and more delta V for a payload, we must supply an amount of fuel that grows exponentially. This is absolutely correct, and that exponential growth curve is brutal. However, the rocket equation only holds true for a single mass comprising the payload, the fuel, and all other accelerated components like tankage. In other words, the rocket equation does not consider using outside energy to deliver fuel to a payload already in transit. If fuel is delivered to a payload in transit, then used to accelerate the payload after delivery, the rocket equation only applies to the mass of the payload and the attached components accelerated as a unit with the payload at the time of acceleration. So, the rocket equation still holds true, but we are not accelerating the payload and all mission required fuel as a single mass. By breaking down the fuel into smaller packages and delivering it to the payload utilizing energy not originating from the payload, only the shallower, less brutal initial curve of the rocket equation is utilized for fuel recalculations, but it is utilized multiple times. We have the technologies already to navigate with sufficient precision to approach and dock with objects in space. We have the technology to communicate with and send navigation instructions to devices in distant space. We've been doing both of those things since the 1960s. A quick bit of math will also prove that splitting up fuel for missions with small delta-V requirements can lead to inefficiencies rather than efficiencies. So this method is not appropriate for every mission in space. So, having given a brief overview, here is what I'm asking you to disprove. Begin. The remote fuel method statement. As delta-V requirements for an in-space mission utilizing reaction mass for delta-V grows, it will become more fuel efficient to accelerate the mission payload incrementally during transit via usage of multiple deliveries of fuel, that fuel having been accelerated by forces with sources external to the mission payload, as opposed to carrying all of the fuel required to generate the mission delta-V requirements with the payload as a single mass. End. Stipulations. 1. Payloads start from rest. 2. Payloads are not impacted by relativistic effects. 3. No forces other than the propulsion system affect the payload. 4. Compare like to like. Any explicit technologies or fuels used in a disproof must be homogeneous across all aspects of the disproof. Example: no comparing kerosene fuel to hydrogen-oxygen fuel. No comparing ion drives to chemical propulsion technologies. No comparing payloads or fuel quantities of different masses. 5. Delta-V must be the same for all payloads used in examples. 6. You can't game the system by using the mass of the universe to limit fuel available for propulsion. 7. No intentional logical failures. Try to make it work. Example: don't prove that it can work using a technology that doesn't exist, then use the non-existence of the technology as a disproof. 8. Do not confuse delta-V with distance from point of origin. We have existing technologies and the engineering capabilities right now to use this method to dramatically reduce the fuel and or time requirements of high delta-V missions within our solar system, such as trips to the Moon, Mars, the asteroid belt, or other locations. This method can also be used as the backbone of many potential methods to protect Earth from near-Earth objects, or to initiate a real in-space industrial revolution. I am confident that no one will find a way to disprove the remote fuel method, since such a disproof would also require disproving the rocket equation. So, here is the second way that you might earn $1,000 from this video. But before we get into that, I need to give you a little more background. I have no meaningful connections to the space propulsion community. This idea was something that I came up with after reading an article about the Dawn spacecraft's mission to Ceres while on a break at work, and wondering to myself why they didn't just send it more fuel rather than having the spacecraft puttering around in the solar system for years. That led to a light bulb moment, and me spending hundreds of hours on this project, researching and calculating for months. I thought I had to be wrong, that I really hadn't spotted an enormous hole in humanity's approach to in-space propulsion. But as it turns out, I was right. In short, the entire in-space propulsion community appears to have missed the most efficient method to use reaction mass fuels to perform rapid high delta V in-space propulsion for over 50 years. Crazy, huh? However, if you are not part of the space science community and have no contacts in that community, they won't listen to you. At least all of the people and publications I tried to reach out to were either non-responsive or arrogantly dismissive. I'm certainly not going to go out trying to contrive some creepy way to personally locate people in the real world space propulsion community. That would be embarrassing. So I'm offering this public challenge with rewards that most people will see as not insignificant. That background information aside, the other way for someone to make $1,000 US from this video is to be the person Elon Musk tells me is responsible for him personally reaching out to me to talk about the remote fuel method and how it could benefit SpaceX. I specifically want to speak to Mr. Musk before other companies because the SpaceX engineering team has already solved or improved upon many technologies that would directly impact the rollout of the remote fuel method. We will have to trust Mr. Musk to provide an accurate winner to the second half of the contest. If he tells me that the person who told him wishes to remain anonymous, then I will provide Elon the money to distribute to the person who drew his attention to me. I have no way to validate what he says. It is possible, though extremely unlikely, that both prizes will be won. If that happens, I will pay both. That's all, folks.